Thank you very much, and thank you, Chair. I'm now going to see if this still works. I wanted to start with a rather depressing account of a conversation I had probably about 3 or 4 years ago, with the Institute of British Insurers. And we were discussing the role of flood, or the role of organisations and land management, particularly in relation to flood management, and we touched on the principle of insurance companies working with land managers to try to alleviate flood risk. And whilst we were having some success with the individual insurance companies, the Institute of British Insurers were quite clear, and I've purged most of the conversation from my mind, apart from the closing statement. And the closing statement was, you would have us installing smoke alarms in houses next. And to me, that was really important. When short-term business objectives rail against common sense and actually longer-term business sense, or business sustainability, I find this rather depressing. Those of you that know it will know this is the area sort of at the bottom of the Cambrian Mountains, the plain, the Shropshire Plain. It's looking like that pretty much every winter. But the future doesn't actually look like that. It doesn't actually look like business and NGOs and government working in a non-sustainable way. There are some really, really good examples of business working in very sensitive ways, particularly the water companies, adopting a more sustainable approach to land management, not only directly managing the water resource itself, but managing the more complex social and economic interrelationships that underpin its health. The importance of a more integrated approach to business is well known now, to government policy is well known, and we have that clearly demonstrated in the ecosystem approach as one major sort of policy venture. Protected landscape organisations go one step further though. I think protected landscape organisations have always been at the front of sustainability. It's actually what we're all about. They've always been about partnership working, they've always been about collaboration. And they've always been about building virtuous circles, or trying to build virtuous circles. As cross-sectoral partnerships who understand policy integration, you're there. You're actually at the forefront of everything that needs to come together. You've got an immense contribution to make, as the Minister said, to this positive future. But what about water and natural beauty? Why are areas of outstanding natural beauty and national parks important when it comes to water? And more than this, why are they especially important? All land is important, but why are protected landscapes especially important? And I wanted to start to answer this with a brief reminder of just how much water we have on the globe to play with, to use. Only 3% of the world's water is fresh water, and most of this is locked up in the ice caps or in accessible areas that we can't get to. We actually only have access to about 1% of the world's fresh water, and most of this is lost as it runs back to the sea. This leaves us an estimated 12,500 cubic kilometres on which to survive, and that really doesn't sound a great deal when you look at it in terms of the whole planet. Especially when we know that 70% of that water goes on food production, so we've only got 30% of the 1% left. But actually, when you look at the amount that we're using as a globe, we're actually only using a third of the water that we have available to us. So on the face of it, we've still got a long way to go. We've still got 2/3 fresh water left. But we know from personal experience that we have issues, despite the fact that we've only used a third of it. Water isn't evenly distributed, nor does it reach us in a predictable manner. As the climate changes, so this gets worse, and it will continue to get worse. We've got expanding populations and growing industry in areas where water is scarce. And this is an example that I found quite obvious, the Yangtze River in China. It now doesn't actually reach the sea for part of the year. This is a major civilization that grew out of its access to that water. We've got areas that have plentiful rainfall, but we just can't catch it in time. So it seems that we've got a lot of water, or we've got the wrong water in the wrong place. But water has always had a tendency to behave unpredictably. That's why so much of our civilization is built around the control of water. the control of systems that allow us to have clean, fresh water. Clean, fresh water is essential for life, and it's always been a component, as the Minister mentioned earlier, of what we consider to be desirable, hospitable landscapes. Whether you take here the Arcadian approach to landscape or the more picturesque approach, it's no surprise that our notion of natural beauty is tightly linked to one of life's essentials. It would be rather odd if it wasn't. And it's not just the value of fresh water that's important. It's the value of marine, the life-giving properties of the marine environment that sit at the other end of the water cycle. AONB partnerships and national park authorities are important because they've long recognised water as an important element of a functioning landscape. It's as simple as that. It's been picked up in legislation. It's firmly part of our psyche when it comes to natural beauty. Historically, this may have been because of water's aesthetic, spiritual or immediate economic value, but now as we know more about systems and environmental processes, we tend to look at water in terms of water control. So we look at the uplands in terms of their ability to lock up water and save flooding downstream. And we look at our chalklands in terms of aquifers providing fresh water to towns and cities. Or in their role as tourist destinations along the coast, where you've got the high quality landscapes coming together with the allure of water to maximise economic benefit, and that's something we'll be looking at and have looked at already today. When it comes to water, AONBs and national parks are especially important. But let's not pretend everything is rosy. Public spending cuts are having an increasingly debilitating impact on those services that depend on public funding. AONBs are not outside of that loop. AONB partnerships have taken their share of the hits. They've done their best to roll with the punches, and we've adapted and moved and changed as best we can. However, some are starting to look a little bit unsteady on their feet. It would be a travesty if we lost the baby with the bathwater, if we let collapse the very mechanism that we've been nurturing, growing, working on since designation of Gower in 1956. This designation was set up to provide an integrated approach to land management, and that's what we're doing, and we're getting better at it. So we've really got to think carefully about how we ensure we stay at it. So finally, I wanted to end on a positive note. I don't think that actually things are negative. In many ways, we're far more innovative than we were 5 years ago. We apply all that we know about partnership working, collaboration, sustainable development, and the inherent value of the British landscape to the current challenges we face. And there are examples everywhere, and we'll see more tomorrow. The protected landscape approach is not just a good one, it's an excellent one. We know it works. It's up to you to make it live, to really make it come alive. So I'll leave on that note. Essentially, I'd like to say it was all in your hands, but we've got the tools to actually do the job, so let's do it. Thank you very much.